So let's call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. It is 6:30. So thanks everybody for coming tonight, the end of July. We were just all kind of joking about how summer is just flying by, and here we are, end of July. So first order of business, we have our agenda that was sent out to us. Does anybody have any modifications or changes they'd like to make to the agenda? Okay. If not, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. Any objections? Okay, without objection, our agenda is approved. Okay, next on the items, we have our minutes from our last meeting. They were sent out to us by email, and so does anybody have any major changes or items for the to adjust the minutes? Okay, hearing none, could I get a motion to amend or to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. Is there a second?
Second.
I didn't catch who seconded. I'm sorry.
It was me, Abigail.
Okay, Abigail, thank you. Okay, we have a second. All right. Any objection to approval of the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. All right, first item on our agenda is an MDOT update on the Odenton Mark Station. So, Sam, I see we have David here. So, David, we'll turn over to you.
Yeah, so Darren Cooper on my team had texting me saying he's in the waiting room. Do you?
So I see we have 6 attendees. I don't see him in there. Let me see if I can figure out how to get him into the meeting. But Dave, let's have you go ahead and start, and I can work on trying to figure out what's going on with this link.
Okay. Let me tackle the next thing here and share my screen. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Great. And Darren's the project manager for this, so he was going to help. So if he joins, please let me know. But I can go ahead and kick us off. So good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. Sorry. My name is David Zayden. I'm Chief of Real Estate and Transit-Oriented Development for MDOT. I run the Office of Real Estate and Economic Development at MDOT, which is located in the Secretary's office. And we're really excited to be talking to you tonight. There is a lot of activity happening related to transit-oriented development in MDOT and in the new administration. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a kind of a broader view of what we're doing here at MDOT and what's kind of driving us. And then we'd love to have a good conversation about Odenton and the state-owned land there and where we're headed and get some initial thoughts on those sites, because we do see that as a priority site for the administration, and we're looking forward to going out to the market and getting a strong developer partner to help us see that through. So I'll go ahead and dive in. If anybody has any questions or anything, please chime in. I'm not sure if I can see hands being raised as I'm sharing, but just feel free to interrupt. So, but to start at kind of the bigger picture, TOD is a major priority of the Moore-Miller administration. I was hired last April through Secretary Paul Wiedefeld to kind of transform the Office of Real Estate and Economic Development into what Secretary Wiedefeld has called the TOD arm of the state. So we're really looking at focusing all of our resources to bringing TOD, to pursuing TOD as a priority for many reasons. One of which, first, fundamentally, TOD is meant to increase transit ridership. As a state, we are a transit-rich state in terms of the transit that we own and operate. And we want to make sure that we're getting the most out of that transit in terms of ridership and connecting opportunity and populations and jobs. But more specifically, Governor Moore put out the Moore-Miller administration 2024 state plan earlier this year. And it named transit-oriented development as a specific tool in two specific areas. One is to tackle the affordable housing shortage of the state. Maryland, like many states across the country, is seeing a crunch in terms of housing. How we are short 96,000 housing units, and so that's an overall goal for the state, is to really focus on housing and helping relieve housing crunch that the state is feeling. Furthermore, the governor feels that TOD is an important driver of economic growth. The state is lagging in terms of our economic growth, particularly compared to our neighboring states, Virginia and Pennsylvania, and really focusing on TOD as a core priority is part of the tools that the governor sees, and I think Secretary Wiedefeld and the MDOT staff sees as a way to alleviate that. So it's a really fantastic time for TOD in the state, and we're really excited to really focus on it and start moving projects like Odenton forward. So how are we doing that? We are standing up kind of two core programs to focus on getting more TOD for the state. First is we're standing up a true joint development program. So what does that mean? That means that the state, we own a lot of land, Odenton being a prime example of this. We own a lot of land adjacent to transit, over 300 acres of undeveloped land. Most of that is next to the Penn Line or the Baltimore Metro and light rail systems. And they're pretty much used as underutilized parking lots. And we want to focus our efforts in leading the development of these sites for mixed use, dense communities, as transit-oriented development to serve as a catalyst for the state. So we're standing up a joint development program, and Odenton will be a benchmark of that program. Furthermore, there are plenty of other sites around the state where maybe the state doesn't own land, there are different characteristics. Maybe the local jurisdiction has a great idea that they want to push. We want to be able to support that. So we're standing up programs to help support TOD efforts being led by others. And that's really being embodied by the TOD designation program, which some of you may have heard about. This is a state program whereby a local jurisdiction can get a site TOD designated, and we're going to be standing up a grant program to help provide funding to help move those projects forward. Odenton's an interesting example because not only is it going to be part of our joint development portfolio, but it also is TOD designated. So there's going to be opportunities to get funding to help move this forward in parallel with what MDOT is leading. One of the key aspects to doing joint development is collaboration. MDOT can't do this in a vacuum. We have key partners that we see throughout the process. That includes our local jurisdictions, such as in Arundel County. The federal government is a key partner as well, particularly the Federal Transit Administration. We want to get good developers and really get developers that are going to be key partners with us over the long term. Other state agencies are going to be important to our collaboration. DHCD here in the state is an important partner of ours. They are very, very focused in investing their resources into housing next to transit. And so we are working on strategic partnerships with them. But I think more importantly to any of this are the communities. We see community engagement and conversations like we're going to have tonight as a key part of our work. So we're very excited to be doing this, and we look forward to the dialogue. So one of the key initiatives that we have related to joint development is our Penn Line Joint Development Strategy. This is a strategy that we've been working on for about 6 months. And this is related to looking at all of our stations along the Penn Line, which is also the Northeast Corridor, and understanding what are the TOD opportunities and what are the TOD strategies at those stations. Obviously, Odenton is a linchpin in this corridor. We've been working on understanding what the market impacts are, what we have to do to organize ourselves to be ready to get a developer partner and move things forward in terms of joint development. This is kind of an analytical study where we want to understand what the costs are, what are the investments that we need to make, and how we can move development forward. So we'll be releasing this strategy later this month, and the punchline for this group is that Odenton is seen as our key near-term opportunity because not only of the availability of land, but also with the investments that the county has been doing in terms of the parking garage. So this will be coming out within the next month, and I think, like I said, we'll be talking more about the details tonight. But Odenton, again, is a key priority from this strategy. So to dive into that a little bit, and I know everybody's familiar with the site, but we have two parcels here: the west lot, which is almost 13 acres, and then the north lot, which is a little over 7. We see this as a key opportunity. And there are kind of different mechanisms by which we want to pursue this. We want to make sure this increases access to transit. We want this to expand job opportunities. We want to make sure that housing is a part of this. And so I think we see this as a prime opportunity for multifamily housing of different types. And Darren can talk a little bit more about that. Also, development of this will help us lead to meeting some of our climate change goals in terms of reduction of vehicle miles traveled. I think one thing to mention tonight, and some of you may have seen the press on this in the last month or so, is we have a new focus on complete streets. At MDOT, we have an updated and more progressive complete streets policy. And what does that mean? That means that we really focus, and again, this is all being worked with the State Highway Administration. We're really focused on making sure that the streets, particularly around transit, support multimodal connectivity, pedestrian access, safety. And we think that's going to be a really important part to how Odenton builds out, because we want to make sure that that connection through the town center to the transit all works for pedestrians, for bikes, and also, for multimodal components, including cars. So we're looking forward to kind of using Odenton as a jumping off point for our complete streets work. To talk about the prior work, I know some of you probably were involved with this. I think the staff at MDOT has turned over, and so we have a new point of view, and weren't totally involved with this before, but we want to acknowledge that there was a previous effort with the Bizzuto group, and there was a whole program, and there were some hurdles to doing that project. There was the garage. We know about the opportunity, the efforts to get a RIF loan to help finance it, and we think we're in a much better position now. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to mention this, is that we think that we're in a position now where we have. We were very grateful to the county in terms of its support for the new parking garage. That's going to free up the site for development. And we feel like the state is in a much more supportive and organized position to drive this forward. So we just want to acknowledge that previous work, and we're looking forward to the success through this current effort. And again, just want to acknowledge the county's efforts with the garage. We know that's in the midst of design. This is going to be a key issue throughout the state in terms of doing transit-oriented development, is we have to make those investments in the public infrastructure. And we're grateful to the county in stepping up. We look forward to working with them to see this garage get built and then help that spring the development through the rest of the site. So I'm going to turn this over to Darren Cooper on the team, who's the project manager here, to talk about some of the opportunities and the constraints more specific to the site itself. And we're certainly interested in your comments on these as we move it through. So Darren, just let me know when you want me to advance, and then I'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you, David. So good evening, everybody. Great to be here. So as David pointed out, there are a number of different things that we're obviously looking at as it relates to Odenton, the Odenton Mark Station. On the screen now is just what we've started to unpack and realize as it relates to the opportunities presented by the station, the site, and its immediate surroundings. So there are 4 distinct things noted on the screen. It doesn't mean that this is solely, this encompasses all the opportunities, but these are some of the most stark opportunities that we've found thus far. One of which is leveraging the recently approved town center, Odenton Town Center zoning. It really dovetails incredibly well in terms of being supportive of TOD and providing for walkable transit-oriented development overall. Obviously, the parking garage, that reduction of the surface lots frees up a tremendous amount of land area for private development, and it'll be incredibly impactful. So that's a huge opportunity that we have here in comparison to other stations. There's an opportunity to improve that north-south pedestrian access and connection between the west lots and the north lots. So traversing Maryland 175 is a big piece here, and we recognize and acknowledge that that is an impediment as well as it relates to activity on the west side of the tracks. Creating new and improved east-west connections as well, pedestrian access across the northeast corridor, that east lot and the proposed town center park, the realization that it is effectively cut off from the west lot because of the other tracks, and so there's an opportunity here to also increase that improvement, or improve that connection rather. And last and certainly not least, but the bike ped orientation and infrastructure along Annapolis Road and Odenton Road east of the station, just ultimately improving improving those connections for seamless travel for folks with their bike ped orientation to better access the site, navigate the site, and interact with everything that not only we're looking at potentially on the at the station site, but the immediate surroundings of the existing developments. So tremendous number of opportunities there. And Dave, if you hop into the next slide on what we've spotted as some of the key constraints. So you'll see that a number of these actually tie back into the opportunities as well. First off, the development parcels in and of itself, what the state owns and controls is quite fragmented because of the major thoroughfares, again, with Annapolis Road to the north, the topography, because of the environmental elements with the wetlands, and just the Northeast corridor in and of itself. Those are some significant barriers. And so we've got to figure out how we traverse those things and ultimately leverage them in a manner that also dovetails very well with improvement of connections, or the improvement on connections help circumvent some of these challenges. The proposed Odenton Town Center Park, again, it lacks access from the development site. So we've got this tremendous resource that will come to fruition. And looking at this aerial, we are bisected or severed off from the station and from the west lot and the potential there, because there's no way to traverse those tracks. So doing something that can help eliminate that barrier is front and center. The fragmented pedestrian and cycling networks, limited connectivity beyond the immediate station area. Again, a number of different things that we've been able to unpack and uncover as it relates to fits and starts of a bike ped orientation and an opportunity to close up some of those gaps and improve the overall pedestrian and cyclist experience here is going to be key. And then certainly not last but not least, but the discharge point from the western platform that exits out onto the west lot, it is very it limits the access. It limits the user's access or line of sight to some of the other great things that are here currently and things that could come down the line. So addressing that, acknowledging that, and ultimately creating a better opportunity for folks to stay, engage, interact before just hopping in a car and heading on out of the vicinity of the station. So I would say those are the top four, if you will, of what we're looking at right now, what we've already started to uncover with respect to the study. And so here on your screen is a map as it relates to a number of different things, big picture wise. So looking at this highlights what we consider the development strategy. So there are a number of core principles that we're using as the guide point of any sort of activity that and conversation that we're having with stakeholders, and what we think is the most appropriate direction for bringing things to fruition. What you see off on the right in the illustration is a host of different things. So at the center is Odenton Station, but then there are a number of things that are included in here in terms of commercial site plans, residential PUDs, parks and open space, and then just general flows of traffic through and around the area. So from a development principle standpoint, we started off with making sure that we want to support the Odenton Town Center character goals, east and west core. The hope is to create higher density mixed use focus on the west lot. And while doing so, also making sure that we appropriately acknowledge and account for not only the neighboring historic district, but the existing neighborhoods in and of itself. So properly transitioning to those areas to the north and to the east, and again, respecting the historical elements. So that way we can realize some great opportunity on the site, and also do it in a manner that is incredibly respectful of all of the existing elements. A secondary principle is improving the connectivity and access between the development and proposed Odenton Town Center Park. As I mentioned before, it's a great opportunity, and we recognize it as a current constraint. Streamlining access between the station and multimodal connections. So part of this is the garage in and of itself does provide for flow of shuttles and buses coming in and out, and just making sure that any and everything that we look to collectively does nothing less than improve that flow and that traffic through the site, and create ease of access for more modal activity and support across the board. Creating significant on-site open space and attraction adjacent to the station. So again, with recognizing that there are the wetlands here on this site, and so acknowledging that and recognizing that there are development limitations with that, but that also creates a grand opportunity for preserving some open space and presenting some other opportunities, unique experiences for future users on the site and folks navigating the site. And then lastly here is establishing active frontages along Town Center Boulevard and Annapolis Road. So it's really going from the station being set so far back from the street and kind of being buried by the surface parking lot to taking the activity from the station and adding some other uses that ultimately bring some energy out closer to the curb line, if you will. So further activating the site and creating, again, a more unique experience that expands above and beyond just the MARC rail station.
So just to add on to something that Darren just covered. So what we see these principles as our kind of our first thought as to what we're going to expect when we go out with a joint development solicitation and get a developer partner. We'll put these out there along with that solicitation to say, look, these are some of the things that we want the development community to think about. And so we're certainly interested in hearing, your perspective on these and if there's anything else that we should be thinking about as we do that. But to go to the last slide here, you want to cover this, Darren?
Yeah, I'm happy to go through this. And so just to dovetail on what David just mentioned, is that when we ultimately go out to the market with the public solicitation, it is, hey, we have some ideas, some thoughts that we've had some conversations with a host of different stakeholders as it relates to the potential for the site. And we'd love to see if the development community can come up with something better that can actually deliver on a host of different things that I think we'd all hope to see in lieu of the existing service parking lot. So with that being said, this is just an abbreviated schedule of the path to joint development. Tonight is the briefing of the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee. And subsequent to this, we have the public release of the Penn Line strategy. As David pointed to, that's what we're targeting for next month. After that, we're actually looking at releasing an RFQ for the Odenton Station West Lot in particular in October of 2024. There are some distinct elements associated with the North Lot, and so we think it's of the best interest to go forward with the West Lot first, while we address some other things as it relates to prior history and potential environmental factors as it relates to the North Lot. So after that RFQ release, we do plan to get an official RFP out in January of 2025, and getting to the point where after reviewing the responses, we can select a development partner, ideally by March, early spring of 2025. And then we're moving forward from there with the overarching expectation of that North Lot being part 2. And we would get a separate RFQ release for that in 2026. So we'd be able to get some activity going for the bulk of the site on the West Lot in particular, and then come back around for a second turn with the North Lot.
Quick question. RFQ here is being referred to as request for qualification.
That is correct. Request for qualification. So the thought being that we can get that out first and get a read from the development community where there may be interest, and get a strong sense of what the credentials are of those parties that may have an interest. And we can utilize that as an opportunity to kind of whittle the herd with a certain respect, and then get the most qualified parties engaged for participation in the RFP process in and of itself.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
And I just as an addendum to this, because maybe some of you, were around for the first experience, didn't want to get into too much, inside baseball here in terms of what's happening at MDOT, but we're kind of revamping how we do all of this, all the way down to the mechanics. And one of the things that we're doing is revamping how we do our solicitations. And, when we get to the RFP, as Darren just mentioned, one of the things that we're going to expect in response is, how do you plan on meeting these principles? How do you bring your vision to the site? But there are also some other things we want, and that is, how do you plan on engaging the community? as we go through this and as we get a developer partner, as we finish out planning and design and move that into actual, dirt being moved, we want community engagement to be part and parcel of that process throughout. And so that'll be something that we'll be expecting to hear from the development communities once we get into these solicitations. So that's a bit of an overview of where we are. We would love to address any questions or hear any thoughts that you may have on the expectations here, and have a good conversation.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. Definitely appreciate it. And so, yeah, we'll go to the committee. Chad, I saw, or actually Colette, you had your hand up first.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation. This was very helpful and thorough and efficient as well. I do have several questions, but I'll just start with one. Can you share a little bit more about the TOD designation grant program? Because I am wondering, as part of this, whether there is any opportunity for revitalization efforts of current businesses within the TOD zone, especially when it comes to if the long-term plan is to work on the frontage for Annapolis Road or 175, that there are opportunities for existing businesses there to have tax credits or grants or loans made available where they can also do some improvements. Because I do think that would really help things in the town center in general. And it feels like a good opportunity to have that connection with the community and bring those folks along instead of having them feel like they're going to be displaced with some of the new stuff that's coming.
Sure. Well, I think there's two different answers to that. First of all, as it relates to the new grant program, and actually both these answers a little bit of a preview of some things you might see in the press here soon. We are releasing a request for information to the local jurisdictions and to the public about the grant program, because basically what that entails is once you have a TOD designated site, you can apply for grant funding to get to advance design on implementation projects. So for instance, connectivity. If there's a need for connections to the site, connection to these existing businesses, I think that's something that can be qualified in the grant program potentially. We're just standing that up. We have an RFI coming out this week related to getting information back on the kind of the ground rules for that grant. But there is $5 million of seed money in that grant program now that we need to get allocated this fiscal year. And so we will be standing that up and having the opportunity for grant submissions later in the fall. So there's a lot there. I mean, there might be some opportunities to achieve something, related to what you were discussing, particularly when it comes to connectivity or site infrastructure. I think the second piece is we are working on an MOU with DHCD that'll come out in the next couple of months, if not within the month, actually. But it's really structuring how we work with DHCD and reflecting their priority on TOD and supporting community development around transit stations. And I can't say I'm an expert in their programs, but I think they have certain programs that support existing businesses like you're describing. And they may be a good source in helping achieve some of that. So we're happy to be a conduit in engaging DHCD, who's very interested in Odenton, and seeing if there's a way to get some money to do the work you described.
Thank you.
If I can add to that real quick, David, I think you're absolutely right. DHCD has a number of different, Maryland DHCD has a number of different programs and tools and resources at their fingertips, including whether it's neighborhood revitalization programs.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think for the good of this group, it's be helpful to be aware that we've been in conversation with the county, with economic development. Anne Arundel County Economic Development has been a part of a few different conversations with us. And so I'd imagine that as the process moves along, even from the economic development enterprise, there would be different tools and resources available to those local businesses, local establishments, to make sure that there's an opportunity for everybody to realize improvements as we all see this thing move along. So the goal is not to ultimately see anybody fall by the wayside, so to speak.
Thank you. Chad, next.
Afternoon, and thank you for the presentation. I saw the desire to increase access to mass transit. Do we know, is there any plans with MDOT to actually increase multimodal capacity? Like, are they bringing more buses, more ride shares or anything with this, or are they just bringing in the ability for more people to come in?
So, the site is served not only by MARC trains, but then also the county's shuttle bus services, and also I think the shuttle services to Fort Meade. There's a lot of different variables there. I think from our standpoint, there's kind of two answers. One is I think the parking facilities being set up in a way that can support the existing bus services as well as capacity for additional. So the garage design, as I understand it, is kind of being set up to support that additional connection. The second piece is the MTA is doing their MARC growth and transformation plan, which is looking at expanded service for MARC. And one of the things that I find to be really exciting is we have framework agreements with the state of Virginia and the state of Delaware to eventually expand MARC service to those states. So you could conceivably have a one-seat ride from Odenton to Northern Virginia or DCA, and to the opportunities in those areas as well. So I think those are all that expanded capacity, both for the trains, for the bus, and for all that multimodal service is really going to become a really great value play for the development of the site and just create opportunity for the area. So we're really excited about that. And I hope that gives you some perspective on where that's headed.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Stuart.
Hey, everybody. So appreciate the presentation and the effort. I don't think anybody on the committee nor at MDOT has the history I have with the parking garage, with the previous development.
Mm-hmm.
All this has been done previously. You had a really strong development group with Bazzuto that couldn't get it done. And I hope it's different this time. My expectations are a low bar. David, you said punchline, and that was really interesting use of words, punchline, because it almost sounds like a joke. If you look at back to 2006 when this thing started, and we still don't even have the parking garage element of it, although moving forward. So, and one of the other things, saying that this time is different, it's a good time to do this. Extremely high interest rates, extremely costs for construction. It's very hard to provide affordable housing in this particular element. Now, Osprey across the street presented to this committee last month with a great project, and they were able to accomplish it by loan programs within the state, but the state designates where in the different jurisdictions these overlays go for different funding resources, and there's a couple major ones missing from Odenton that would allow for some of the older sites to get redeveloped for more affordable housing. A lot was accomplished this year across the street, as I said, at the corner of Town Center Boulevard and Hale and Annapolis Road, and the folks that are under construction across from Fort Meade is just terrific. And they were able to navigate because it's a really, really interesting navigation system to get all the funding pieces together, because it's not going to one bank and getting a loan. It's pulling together pieces. A lot of times you don't know until the end whether you're going to get it or not, and by not getting it, not having the opportunity to complete a project. So the West Lot, the state outbid me when I did Town Center Commons on that particular property. We had proposed dense multifamily housing there with a parking garage. And now I guess it's 12 years later, 13 years later, that's exactly what the state's looking to do now. Could have already been done. So I hope there's mechanisms to get some of these things moving forward a lot quickly. Again, I don't think anybody has the history I have on putting all these projects together around the town center, and dealing with MDOT and what it takes to do that. That's all I have to say. If anybody on the committee would like some more information, they're more than happy to reach out. Different group in MDOT, I agree. But I don't know how many governors we've had since 2004 when it was first awarded. And now we have another governor saying the same thing, that he wants to get this done. It's not just this part of it, it's getting the other opportunities, especially for financing, those overlays for affordable housing and competition for different type of funding mechanisms that can help for affordable housing. We need to make sure that it's laid over the area properly, so that developers can use that as a piece to whittle down on the cost of borrowing, which is just crazy today. And again, by the time somebody gets this going, interest rates hopefully will go down, but now, I think they'll go up and down for the next several years at least. So there's a lot of unknown with that. So anyway, I don't want to take anybody's more time. I appreciate the time you've given. I really appreciate coming up with the strategy and the effort and keeping us informed. So thank you for that.
Sure. No, definitely appreciate that. And yeah, I think I used the word punchline in the wrong context. It certainly wasn't meant to reflect anything being a joke. I think I was more thinking about the soundbite there. But completely agree with all the challenges that you identified. And again, I kind of go back to one of the things that we've been working on is our relationship with DHCD, who in their QAP, which is their program that directs their the LIHTC program, the housing tax credit program. They're giving bonus points for projects that are adjacent to transit, and also will be giving bonus points in that program to projects that are being developed with MDOT. So we're hoping to get these mechanisms to the points you raised, Stuart, that can help overcome some of these financial challenges that we're seeing in the sector, for sure. So and appreciate your comment about previous administrations, and we're excited about being the successful one.
Stuart, I will say very quickly that I can appreciate your comments. I part of my background is I come to MDOT with a background in affordable housing development, so I fully understand your points along those lines. They're very well received.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, Abigail.
Excuse me, can I just have one more comment, Abigail? 1 second, it'll be literally 10 seconds. Is I appreciate somebody on the team that does understand the development world, especially affordable housing that you're trying to promote. It's very important. So thank you for that. Thanks, Abigail. My apologies.
Yeah. I have 3 questions, but I know we have a couple hands, so we can decide if I do one and then others. So one of the first questions I have is, we've talked about with development coming in this area, the importance of wayfinding, with that character and development there. Odenton, that area still kind of acts as like a throughway where you're going through something, but there's not really significant wayfinding to really understand. And that's a big part of TOD and understanding of space. So first, I'm curious to understand if those considerations, how they may be reflected in the RFP.
Well, I mean, to your point, I mean, I think that's part and parcel of TOD, and we'll want to make sure that whatever development proposals we get have a wayfinding strategy. you know, the station there is kind of, you know, we have the garage going in. It's going to kind of shift the balance away from the historic station, and so we want to make sure, and we're working with MTA on this, that the development provides that connection to the station, but then also to the town center. So you know, this is something we'll want to work with the development team on, and we'll make sure that they know that it's an expectation.
Okay. And the two other questions I had, so you referenced like the big part of this is the TOD, and then also the emphasis on the complete streets. And I'm curious to understand how, if the RFP is outlining ideas of placemaking and tactical urbanism, because we'll have the new housing, we'll have the transportation, you just reference the wayfinding, but bringing in more of those pieces where placemaking kind of acts as like that glue that weaves it together.
Completely agree. That's my short answer. Yes, we will want to make sure that the development that comes in is reflective of that placemaking, not only in the sense of the TOD in terms of making sure that there's a connection with the station and the transit, and that's all seamless and there's an identity there, but also with the town center master plan and the character there. So yeah, I think these are all expectations that we'll share with the development community as to what we want to see, and we'll evaluate their proposals with those in mind.
And then my last question is about curiosity about if the RFP includes an item on the public engagement strategy or public engagement plan. Right now, especially so with more rapid development seeming to be a priority in the area, there is kind of this, what feels like a divide of attention building between historic long-standing Odenton residents and a lot of new residents. There was even an article, I want to say a week or two ago, that was residents who've said they've lived in Odenton for decades feeling like the new development is taking away from the character from the area because it's not as rural as they expected or it has been in the past. So public engagement strategy beyond just some token public meetings are going to be important. It has to have really active engagement with the faith-based organizations, with the businesses, schools. So I'm curious how much that engagement strategy will be reflected or is outlining expectations in the RFP.
Yeah, so you know, we will ask them to come to us with their ideas for community engagement, and I think that needs to reflect a lot of the issues that you just described. And also, you know, we want developers that not only are competent and can you know, really be smart in pulling this together, but also, you know, have some knowledge of the area, you know, and I think that's going to be an important piece of it. But in terms of how that will work mechanically is, you know, we want a developer partner to come to us with their ideas that we can craft together, because this is a partnership between MDOT and the developer. And I would also say that the county as well. But in terms of the legal arrangement, we are a partnership. And so we want to lock arms with them and engage the community together. So the RFP will ask for their ideas on the best way to engage the community, and then we will evaluate it and look for innovative ways to do it, and also expect some level of understanding of the issues that you just described. You know, we have another joint development project that's going on in Baltimore City at Reisterstown, and we have a public meeting on Monday with one of the public groups there, and it's a joint engagement between us and our developer partners there, because we have a developer partner at that one. And it is kind of an open house kind of style, so it's nothing super innovative on that one, but I think it reflects the fact that we want to do this together, and we want to work with the developers as well as the county to get that level of engagement. So we're going to be looking for good ideas. I can't say that I have the specific ones now, but we'll want a developer partner that has experience in that. And Darren, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add to that is, Abigail, I would say that, and Stuart, more than anybody else, I think you probably be able to partially attest to this, is that our thinking is that The level of engagement by MDOT will likely look and feel different than it has in the past.
That's
So
true.
as it relates to community engagement and things along those lines, just know that you can expect to see a lot more. We intend to be pretty well engaged from a community engagement standpoint and all that good stuff. So I just want to make sure to mention that it's likely that this will look and feel different than it has in years past.
Okay. Thank you. I'll hope to see more than just a 6 p.m. evening meeting and some surveys. I'll take you to your.
Agreed. Agreed.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, my question is actually two-part question is related to the definition of TOD and what makes it work. The first has to do with the first and last mile. And all my years with APTA, that was what defined a good TOD development was whether or not you could get people from their homes and surrounding areas to the station. What seems to be lacking in this presentation is any discussion about that. There was a brief mention of buses coming into the parking garage, but I don't see anything here that talks about how you address the first and last mile. And that needs to be really important because what you'll get is a rush to put up a bunch of buildings and no way to handle the traffic coming in. And right now, 175 is a very busy road, as is 170 at the corner of 175. So if you're going to add more load in that corridor, how are you going to address it? My second part in the definition of TOD is that you talk about dense planning and dense construction. Yeah, we all understand that to get people close to the station. But there seems to also be a lack, except for one statement, and you're sticking to the last slide dealing with green space. You mentioned significant open space adjacent to the station. First of all, what that is and why is there not more of an effort to look at green space around TOD developments? So first question is first and last mile. Where's the transportation planning? And second, where is the detailed discussion of green space, urban forests? Those are very important because, as we all know, it's getting hotter and hotter. And as we develop urban heating islands, that makes it worse. So those two issues.
Yeah, so we do have TOD defined in our state statute, and that's the text that we have here. So that's kind of the starting point where it defines, in this case at Odenton, we're talking about the west and north lot, but that's just the opportunity for the development. Really, when we're talking about TOD here is, as a starting point, is what is that connectivity within a half mile of the station? And the half mile is kind of the benchmark for walkability. I would even extend that to a mile. Given micromobility and bicycling and the rise of those personal mobility devices, I think it's well beyond a half mile. And so what we're developing in our Penline strategy is not just how are we going to look at developing these sites for transit-oriented development or the D in TOD, but what's the connectivity strategy? And so that's going to be part and parcel to what we do here. And I think that brings in an opportunity for our SHA colleagues, but also for the grant program that I mentioned, where we can actually get funding to help start to move some of that connectivity forward. Because I completely agree with your statement. It's not just about the development; it's about the connectivity and how we get all of these areas connected. It's not just about the development.
Yeah, you want to bring in people using local transportation, maybe a bus service. Rather than have them drive to the station. If you have them drive to the station, you've got extensive congestion around the station and the neighborhoods that surround that. So you kind of defeat your purpose for making transportation work when that happens.
Completely agreed. And I think that's all embodied in mode shift, where we're grateful that the parking garage is getting built. We think that'll be significant because there may be certain trips coming to the station now but we're hoping to see some of that being diverted by people taking the advantage to live near the station and be able to use it for their daily activities. I don't want to say commute because commute patterns have changed quite a bit, but completely agreed with that, and that's kind of the core piece that we're going to. In terms of the open space comment, we do see that as an important piece, and I think if there's an opportunity in our principals here to beef that up, we want to talk about that, because I think open space is critical, and making sure that we preserve a lot of the natural features on the site, and we'll expect that from the development community, particularly with the water features and things like that are there today. So I think it's just a matter of making that statement and making sure that the development community understands that that's got to be an important part of what they come in with the development plan.
Yeah, you mentioned that second bullet there, create significant on-site open space. Where are you talking about doing that? Or don't you know yet, maybe?
No, we want that to be a factor. We want the development community to know that that's an important piece, and we don't have a specific plan. We want them to understand, like, this is really important to us in terms of how the site is looked at. We want them to come in with their ideas.
Great, thank you.
Mark,
Darren, I'm sorry, I don't know if you have anything to add there. I keep answering
so the only other thing I wanted to point to real quick is that, Martin, I appreciate your point as it relates to density could equate to traffic congestion if things aren't handled appropriately. And so I wanted to make sure that it was also understood it. So there's been dialogue that's already been happening with the State Highway Authority as well, as we start talking about looking at things from a programmatic perspective and different types of uses, whether it's west lot, north lot, all these different factors, and starting to have those early conversations about what this could mean, what it could equate to, and ultimately, as David pointed to, mode shift, and making sure that things are done in a manner that really take into account all these other elements, so that way we can realize the potential of the site while also really appropriately dovetailing with what's in place right now without making life more difficult for anybody with respect to getting out. I will say that, for example, the North Lot and Hale Street, we're very clear about the challenges that are there with the townhome community and the access along Town Center Boulevard. And so that's part of the dialogue that we've been having. Like, hey, if X were to occur, what is the potential ripple effect here?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks for addressing it. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for the question. Great issues.
I'm going to go to Kaylee because I want to make sure every member of the OTCAC has a chance to ask questions.
I'll be quick. My name is Kaylee De La Puente. I am the Town Center Revitalization Manager with Arundel Economic Development Corporation. Thanks for the shout out about our previous history, Darren. What I just wanted to let MDOT know, if you don't, that this Town Center Revitalization Manager position now, an update is that now exists in the county under economic development. Just wanted to give a quick introduction of myself, let you know that I'm here. And this role is really focused on the three town centers, Odenton, Glen Burnie, and Parole in Anne Arundel County. So I am that one searching for those connectivities between our town centers and the DHCD funding currently.
Okay.
Would love to, be updated, and Mark does a very good job also in planning, keeping me updated with everything going on too. But excited to hear about opportunities for funding coming down from MDOT. And I did just have, also wanted to reiterate the importance and my excitement about seeing open space and attraction on the development strategy. It is going to be super, super hard to maintain or develop and maintain a thriving town center concept without that space. Because without space, there's nothing to bring people to and activate, really. So, which is a common challenge that I have seen. So very excited to see that on the strategy list, and
that's where placemaking
forward to
comes
seeing
in.
how that develops. And also, you mentioned an RFI coming out shortly from MDOT, and could you reiterate what the context for that RFI? And I'm assuming that's request for information and a little more on what information you're gathering in that forthcoming RFI.
Sure. So the RFI is tackling two things. One is we're changing the nature of the TOD designations. We're actually providing some level of expectation to those. In the past, it was kind of like, well, here's a site and it's next to transit. Let's go get it designated. And now we want some more reflection of intentionality from the local jurisdictions and saying, hey, we think this is a great site. Maybe, you know, we're seeing development activity here. We think we can get the right density. We think we can get the right connectivity. So we're kind of putting some expectations on that designation. So that's going to be described in that RFI to get feedback on. And then the second piece is the new TOD grant fund, which was established by what we call House Bill 12 from the 2023 General Assembly session. What that is a grant program to help support the implementation of TODs. So that can be used for public infrastructure, for designing connectivity, for construction of connectivity, all those types of things that can help move TOD forward. And so the RFI is going to describe the criteria for submitting for that grant so that we can get feedback from the jurisdictions on that before we make it official and then issue a notice of funding availability. And it should be going out this week. The governor's office was pushing it out, but that should be going out to all the local jurisdictions and also be available for public review before the end of the week.
And if you don't mind, David, if I piggyback on that, once you go through the RFQ and the RFP process, forgive me, I'm just not as familiar with this. Should there be what is the level of the decision-making process for the RFPs? Is there public outreach during that process? Is that really closely held at MDOT? How that selection process, how closed or open should the expectations be on that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, it is a public procurement. And so you can imagine the regulations around that. So it is something, and it is MDOT land. So we will be conducting that kind of internally. We kind of have to do it that way, just for this. It's a legal and a fairness issue related to our solicitations. But you know, this is why we want to have this engagement now, is because we want to start thinking about what's the expectations here, so we can reflect that in the RFP and then make sure that kind of drives the development. So does that answer your question?
That does, and I really appreciate your clarification there. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so to make sure we have enough time for public comments, if committee members on round two could keep questions brief and focused. Okay, Colette.
Thank you. So first, I just wanted to share that I really appreciate the energy and enthusiasm from both of you around TODs and the shift in perspective for these. It is very exciting, and I'm so glad that you all are looking at things a little bit differently. So thank you. And a question that I had was actually going into the designation piece a little bit more. And I am wondering whether there's been any thought made to specific criteria, especially when it comes to parking maximums instead of minimums, and also, diversity in housing options, that it's not just, and I see Darren, you're smiling, so I'm guessing this is a yes, but if you could talk just a little bit more about sort of the vision as you all have it right now, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Well, since you noticed Darren smiling before me smiling, I'm gonna let him start off with his answer. Darren, do you want to take that?
Sure. I will say, so no, first of all, I appreciate that question. As you can imagine, I'm kind of taking a step back here as it relates to things like parking maximums versus parking minimums. Those are, and the diversity of housing and uses and all that good stuff. That has been part of a larger conversation and ongoing dialogue. So everything down to at a county level, local jurisdiction level, like the types of zoning and requirements that are in play, and just having those discussions as it relates to, hey, what elements actually point in the direction of meaningful TOD and versus elements that can kind of create some impediments unintentionally, and just having those discussions to make sure that like these ultimately point to, hey, we're looking at, again, going to go back to the overarching intent of multimodal utilization with respect to the stations. And so those parking elements certainly come into play if we want to reorient folks on how they engage with the site, get to the site, and interface with a number of other uses, neighboring uses. So big picture wise, that is part of the larger ongoing conversation, not only with respect to Odenton Mark Station, but quite frankly, any station that we're looking at from a potential TOD potential perspective. So that's why I smiled. Dave, I'll pass the microphone back to you.
Well, so I think part of thank you, Darren. And I think part of the question was about standards, and we've kind of wrestled with this because, we're a big state. Not all transit is the same. Commuter rail, such as here, has a certain set of expectations versus what you might find next to Baltimore Metro or the Washington Metro, which we're a funder of as well. And so when it comes to the designation, we don't have a specific hardline standard. We're asking your jurisdictions to demonstrate how they're rationalizing these things. So for instance, we don't want people coming in next to transit with a ton of parking. We want to see that there's been thought put into how that's rationalized. And for housing, that's a really important element. And we do have that as a specific element in the designation process. And we want to know how many units you're achieving, what's the type of units, what's the affordability piece of it. We want to know those things so that we can evaluate it in terms of the TOD designation process. But again, it would be cleaner if we did have specific standards, but at the same time, this is the statewide program, and so we're just trying to push things in the right direction as opposed to having very specific standards. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank
We're
you.
kind of getting in the weeds there.
Okay, Stuart.
Yeah, just Martin touched on the last mile, and it's not an MDOT issue, it's a local issue. And we can't keep on looking to different forms of the phases of the government to take care of everything. There will be no MTA buses rolling into this market. You haven't seen any. I've been working on the last mile since 1999. We tried subscription buses. I tried to get all the apartment complexes and we got funding for it to get a shuttle, so that 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, they can shuttle back and forth, pick people up and take them to the train station. These are ideas. Anne Arundel County has a free shuttle around the area now. I applaud that. All bus transit should be free. The fare box recovery is pittance to what the cost of transit is. And it's such a pittance that it could be found in other places in the budget, or it could be funded out of the Transportation Lack of Trust Fund, which is basically bankrupt and was supposed to be utilized for those types of things. So it's really up to the county to step up. There's also a first mile, and that's what these units take care of around the transit station. So someone doesn't have to walk a mile to get to their transit in the morning. Coming home sometimes is a little bit of a different story, but transit can't be everywhere to everybody. It just can't be. And by creating densities and utilizing the existing infrastructure, that's how we best utilize our transit, our utilities, water, sewer, electric, et cetera, is try to feed off all the existing infrastructure. And that's what we have in Odenton. So let's see if we can get it done this time. And I appreciate everybody's comments from the committee. I think they were very well done. Thank you all.
I'd like to respond to you, Stuart, since you mentioned my name here.
Oh, always more.
I didn't bring up solar panels, so we're not going to talk about that, right? Well, when you're familiar with APTA, many years I spent there, that was a big deal for us, is the first and last mile, whether it's a mile, whether it's 5 miles. But there are a lot of people who live within 5 miles of the station that drive. And you got to get them out of their cars. And I know there was a bus service some time ago, years ago, and it was great. It went down Wild Chapel. You could ride the bus to the station. It was timed to when trains leave. So it was great. Then they tried to expand it, and you couldn't do that anymore. You have to go to Odenton, then out to Gambrels, and then back, and you're on the bus for an hour trying to get to the station that's 1 mile or 2 miles away. So there needs to be something that addresses that first and last mile, whether it be 5 miles, whether it's MDOT or whether it's whoever. I don't know where it resides, but that's an important piece of a TOD. You don't pay attention to that, you just got gridlock around the station.
Martin, what will help that, and for some reason MDOT will not do it, is charge for parking. Okay, their license plate coming from miles away and passing Penn, the airport, etc., wherever the different lines are, to come to Odenton to park for free.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is a big issue. It's always been an issue. We did a survey of license plates. More than 50% of the people came from 15 miles away.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've tried to do that, and for some reason, MDOT will not make this a fee lot. I don't want to pay for parking, but every other lot, state lot, is a fee lot. Why not this one? And that'll help deter that situation, and maybe have people pay $1 on the bus or $2 on the bus, or the free bus actually now. Hop on the
Yeah.
bus.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That may be a strategy that
Yeah,
could be
and
employed.
not just putting it on the ticket. Nobody notices on their marked train ticket. That is not the way to go. It needs to hurt more. It needs to be separated from the ticket, or they need to go in there and have a card where they can put it into a meter that they paid a monthly fee for.
Yeah.
But that's how it has to be. It can't be part of the ticket.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Good points,
Abigail.
thanks.
Jason, did you say I could go? I didn't hear.
Yes, if you do your final comments, please.
Yes, so two questions to build upon what we've discussed already. So with the complete streets policy, I'm curious how much you call out specifically green streets within that. We talked about the integration between green space and open space, and there is, but I wasn't seeing specifically on MDOT's policy where it calls out the green streets, which is having more intentional green infrastructure in the complete streets 9. And then the other question being about, like, as we're talking about transportation investment here of building upon existing systems and considering new ones, how intentional Vision Zero analysis will be integrated in or expected within this RFP of work. We have a county Vision Zero policy, we have a state one, but it's not clear how much that data is really being used or really updated to consider the design of the streets in this area, especially with the new development. The point of Vision Zero is 0 fatalities. Just last year, there was a bicycle death right within this area. So trying to think about how this is an opportunity to be more intentional about these two facets that are important or should be in new development, which is climate resiliency and safety.
Sure. Well, I think kind of the biggest, let me kind of give some background. So when Secretary Wiedefeld took over MDOT, he kind of said, there were, in addition to the modes and NTA and SHA and MA and the importance of the work that they do, he really wanted to have a specific focus on a couple of different things. One is TOD, and so that's the office that I'm running in our focus. But then there's been a second office created called the Office of Environment and Sustainable Transportation that is leading the charge on our active transportation policies. They've developed the complete streets policy, which I know it has a reference to sustainable infrastructure. I don't know it offhand, but I can certainly provide it to you. But it's also tied to our climate change goals and our Vision Zero safety goals. So I think all of that is a core focus of MDOT. And as we advance this, because we want to get a developer partner, but a developer partner is not going to do everything here in terms of like the half-mile connectivity. So we're going to be taking it upon ourselves and working with the county to help implement these connectivity strategies in the public rights of way. And that will be done using our Vision Zero and Complete Streets policies. That'll be the fundamental approach that we'll take. So I think it's something to think about beyond just the development, is we'll want to make sure that the streets themselves follow these policies. And I'm happy to shepherd this. If this is an important issue for the group here, I would encourage a discussion with that group, because this is the Vision Zero and the Complete Streets policies are an important part of what MDOT's focused on. And I think those details might be of interest, and I'm happy to connect in that realm.
I think that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
And the Complete Street work is led by Candice Holford, and she's part of the TOD team too. So she's involved in everything that we're doing, because there's just such an important overlap between Complete Streets and TOD.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of, I think in different calls, we've had folks like complain about the landscaping or the medians and how they're not cared for. And there's so many signs of different areas that say like flood prone, and having those medians or areas just be integrated as like more emphasis on stormwater management.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
for sure.
Easy win.
Yeah. And in the new TOD designation process, we do have green infrastructure as an element. We want to know, as a proposed TOD and in its early stages, we want to know that the local jurisdiction is at least starting to think about how green infrastructure can be worked in TOD sites. So I think that's an important marker for us to lay down in terms of what is important to MDOT and seeing in our TODs. So definitely in alignment with the things you're referring to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'd like to bounce over to public comment. And so if there's anybody in the public who has a question or comment, if you could please indicate by raising your hand, then Sam can escalate your privilege so you can ask your question. All right, so I believe Darby, DH. So Darby, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say I really like the plan to use old parking lots for development and helping to preserve some of our older forested areas. And then since DOT is on the call, I wanted to ask if in your future plans for this project or any other project, if you could consider looking into wildlife crossings. I've just seen a lot of dead wildlife on Maryland's roads recently, and I think, if you have kind of fragmented development, it might be good to have some kind of space for less dead animals or for animals to cross, so there's less fatalities. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I'm happy to we can ping our SHA colleagues to see how that's handled, and we can think about how we work that into our TOD work. Yeah, I don't think it does not. It's never great to see animals being a part of the fatality issues, and Vision Zero should go beyond humans in a lot of ways. So happy to ping our SHA colleagues and see how we can advance that.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your question.
Thanks, Darby. Anyone else from the public who has a question? Okay, so I will bring it back to the committee. So I wanted to say thank you for the detailed presentation. This was excellent, and has a lot of, as you've heard, a lot of good comments. So one thing I just wanted to I think, stress in terms of the comments I heard. There's a lot of good ideas. The one thing I just want to highlight, because I think almost all of my questions actually got asked, which was great, is really it's the connectivity beyond the new development and the Odenton Park. So I'm thinking about your slide where it say improve connectivity and access between development and the proposed Odenton Town Center Park. We need to make sure that connectivity exists or is improved with existing Odenton. And so, for example, I'm thinking about one of the sidewalks that's right along Maryland 175, where the one student was killed last year, just crossing the road. So I think that we need to think about the connectivity with existing developments that is already there that's actually pretty poor, and ways that your strategy can make sure that Odenton that's there right now is still a part of this.
Agreed.
And so the only reason I bring that up is just that one phrase could be interpreted to be intra new development connectivity, which I don't
Right.
think is really your intent, and just to make sure it's not interpreted that way.
No, appreciate that. We will definitely make sure that it's not intended that way, and we'll make sure that that's clear. Yeah, thank you for that.
Jason, part of the hazard, and I don't want to say it's the reason, I'm not alleging that at all, but the lack of maintenance in the Odenton area, okay, on the medians, especially the bridge where that person died, that they decided to ride in the road because it was too overgrown to ride on the sidewalk. It's deplorable. And now you want to build more. So we need you to take care of what's here first before we can support building more. Okay, and I'm a developer. And if you look at the projects I've done around the Odenton Town Center, they're very well maintained because we're required to. Okay, and we get penalized if we don't, but there's no penalty for the state when they don't. It just looks like crap. And it's a regular basis. Mark's not on here today, but I call him 3-4 times a year. And then when it's done, it looks like you sent 2-year-olds out with plastic lawnmowers to cut it. That's not acceptable either. Thank you for your time.
No, and that's exactly it. It's Stuart. It's we have existing infrastructure that needs to be connected to, and to have a cohesive vision, it has to be improved. So I think you're right. All right, Abigail, final comment.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to say, when we discussed the missing middle housing earlier, I just I understand the idea of not being specific when it comes to that area because you want to be open, but I would potentially reconsider that of what's happened when we've talked about multifamily housing now is that we now just emphasize townhouses or condos, and then townhouses are now even bigger than houses, like single family houses at times. And I would love to see cottage courts. I would love to see fourplexes, triple deckers, like true missing middle housing, where it even has the ability to allow for community and that green space from people having shared public spaces. I think from what I've seen in Maryland, our idea of multifamily has just been emphasizing those condos and astronomically sized townhomes. And that's how a lot of developers are getting away with still building what they call multifamily housing, which is not really multifamily housing anymore. So I would really think about more intentionality and calling out some more items with missing middle and multifamily to make sure it doesn't end up these same couple things that are getting built. And also, so it's not just these concentrated houses only in one area and then the expectation to travel to concentrated other commercialized areas, because the idea of TOD is for cohesiveness of multiple uses, not still just siloed uses. Kind of for the form-based code idea, of which I hope we get to one day.
No, agree with all that, and thank you for those comments.
Abigail is a developer here, okay? Sometimes the math just doesn't work. Okay, and the type of project that you want, I totally agree with, but it can't go everywhere. And in those limited space that's at the TOD project, in order for the math to work, they need density. Can't work any other way. You're gonna have you'll have an apartment renting for $10,000 a month. They have to spread the cost of construction, of the site work, if it's a sale, purchasing it across enough units so they can provide it at a reasonable price. And
I think
you're
we're always
talking,
gonna disagree on this, Stuart, of
no, I'm not
how
I'm
who
not
makes money
disagreeing.
faster versus what I think that ends up being the
It's
price.
not money. It's not money. It's being done or not being done. And what you want can't be done there, so we can leave it the way it is, and that's a choice too. That's a choice still, is to not do anything.
Let me
But-
piggyback on top
Yeah.
of you, Stuart. As a realtor, I agree with you. For the amount of space that we're talking about, there's just not enough room there to put all the. It'd be great if we could, but it just doesn't make any sense for a developer to put all of those different type of complexes out there.
And I guess Odenton stays how it is,
Unfortunately, yeah.
if that's all people want.
Okay, so I want to say thank you to our to David and Darren from MDOT. So we appreciate you coming to speak to the OTCAC as well as provide the public a chance to see this plan. Where do we find the Penline strategy that's upcoming, that's going to be released? Where would we go to get that, and where would the community go to get that?
That'll be posted on our website next month, and there'll be a public release of that. So you'll certainly see that more than likely in the press, and you'll be able to get the materials through our website.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. It's a pleasure
Appreciate
being here.
that.
Really appreciate the conversation and the ideas. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next item on our agenda is advocacy and new business. The one item I did want to close out was the subcommittee that we had that created. I want to just close that out. Basically, Abigail and I had chatted back and forth and came with a list, but in the direction in terms of whether the committee can do anything officially, it just got to be too complex to try and figure out how to make that work with open meetings rules and just general fairness to businesses. So I'm going to say we're going to close out that committee as basically it cannot be an official action because there's no way to make that work with the current constructs in terms of how the committee would function as well as the regulations for how the committee functions. So if there's informal work any individual members want to do, great, but it can't be anything that is the committee at large going and visiting without a much more well-defined plan to make sure that the public is informed of where we're going, when we're going there, and what would be done. The logistics got to be just too difficult. So I just wanted to close that out. Does anyone else have any other advocacy and new business items? Okay. One other item I did want to mention, it was in the email. At the last meeting, the county, Courtney said that she would be willing to answer any questions we had over email. So if committee members, you could please take a look at the discussion in the video minutes that were posted for the conversation with Courtney. If you have more questions, please get them to Mark and Sam by, I believe, August 12th was the day that they had posted. If you have more questions for Courtney, they will get answers by our August meeting. So I also wanted to mention that in the advocacy of business. All right. So we're now in the general public comments. So is there anyone from the public who has any comments and you'd like to speak? Okay. So then bringing it back, any last items from the committee?
Jason, this is Martin. Just a comment. I know in this committee, we talk about various topics and there's, a vision that we want to see for the community, and then reality bites and we realize that we can't do that. But I don't think that it's helpful for us to just dismiss ideas that are put out. Let's keep those on the table. Things change. Developers come in and go. So it might still be possible to reach a vision that we want for the community without settling for what we just have now. So just want to make that statement that don't give up on what our vision might be.
I'd agree with that.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Thanks, Abigail.
So-
Any other comments?
Yeah, I guess I would ask, so what is the vision that we want? That, I mean, I guess I need to go back and see the vision statement, but
Yeah,
it
you can read
does
the
seem
vision statement.
to the point, it does seem like, well, this is the way it is, so don't look to move forward, which is kind of disappointing.
I don't think we're there, Chad. I think the committee, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that there is a lot of good ideas that people put forward. I don't think we should squash them. Just keep them on the table and keep looking for possibilities. And you can use the vision statement as a guide to what we want to see. But that has been elaborated, I think, over time. We've had many discussions on this. We've all contributed to what the vision needs to be, what we'd like to see. So I wouldn't want to discourage that discussion.
Agree, Martin. Thanks for bringing that up. You're right. The point of the committee is to have these discussions, and so the other thing we have to keep in mind, though, is there is a realism aspect in terms of not moving forward as well. So
right.
It's important to note, just the committee has to figure out that balance in terms of we may not think, say, for example, a project is something we really want, but then not having something there might be worse. And those are some of the balances we have to struggle with. It's not making a decision or not having something built is a decision in itself. And at some point, I know we've talked about this as a committee over the past couple of years. How do you avoid blight? And that's really the problem with not moving forward, is you can enter a cycle where you basically is ever encroaching blight, and blight breeds blight.
Yeah, exactly. The broken window syndrome.
Exactly. So it's both sides.
But Jason, I don't know if we have time enough, but I just wanted to ask, was there an update on the flats phase 2, as I call it? They had come to us a while ago now. Anything moving on that front? Sam, do you know what's going on maybe, or?
The last I heard was we had that presentation a few months ago on
Yeah.
flats, but I hadn't seen anything since. I'll follow up with the development division if they can provide any additional information on that project and where it stands.
Because they were very helpful in getting the tracks removed off of 170. And they have big ideas about putting in a bike path from their community over to town center. So I want to see where that is.
Any other final comments?
Actually, I reached out to George today, as a matter of fact, just to let everybody know. So we're still working on the rest of the tracks with him. So I'll also try to get an update.
Great.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Sam, for any insight you can give on that. Okay. So if nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Thanks, Colette. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thanks, Brenda. All right. And any objection to adjourning our meeting? Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great July, and we will see you in August. We are adjourned at 7:59.